Call the city council to order because it's 7:30, and we'll call the roll here. But council member Martinez told me that he wasn't going to be able to come tonight. Okay. Anyway, so we're joined by council member Shiltz, Mayor Pro Tem McFerren, and council member Dominguez. So first up is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next up is approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the only consent agenda item we had tonight was the city council minutes from 11/19. So next up is a official proclamation honoring the Eulenspiegel Puppet Theater Company. And the proclamation goes as follows. Whereas the Eulenspiegel Puppet Theater Company was established in 1974 as a touring puppet troupe capturing audiences across the United States and internationally, including performances in East Germany, Australia, Japan, and the Czech Republic. And whereas for the past 29 years, the company has proudly operated the Owl Glass Puppetry Center in West Liberty, Iowa, serving as a beacon of creativity and cultural enrichment. And whereas the Eulenspiegel Puppet Theater Company has participated in 6 National Puppeteers of America festivals, showcasing its dedication to the art of puppetry. And whereas thousands of children and adults have experienced the joy of puppetry through the company's performances, fostering a love for the art form. And whereas the annual West Liberty Children's Festival and the Summer Parade Project, where families create and display giant puppets, highlights the company's commitment to the community engagement. And whereas under the leadership of the lead puppeteer, Monica Leo, a devoted team has ensured that audiences leave the performances with smiles and cherished memories. Now, therefore, I, Mayor of West Liberty, Iowa, do proclaim this day in honor of the Eulenspiegel Puppet Theater Company, celebrating 50 years of dedication to puppet design, puppeteering training, and entertainment. We extend our heartfelt congratulations and appreciate the joy and inspiration that you have brought to countless lives. So thank you very much. We're joined by Stephanie of the staff who will receive this. Thank you. Photo op time. The rest of the council want to join us, you're welcome to come up and be part of this as well.
Oh,
yeah. You. Oh, you're welcome.
Oh, are we all?
Yeah, you're all welcome to come up and be part of this. Yeah. Well, it's an honor to be able to give this proclamation, and we're very proud of the work. And like the proclamation says, a smile. We very much appreciate it. You're welcome.
Thank you, guys. 3, 2, 1.
Now, let me get back to the agenda. You.
Oh, you know your code.
Yeah, I-
Look it up.
Okay, next up are reports from employees, the city manager, the city attorney, the city boards, commissions. And so first up is city engineer Leo Foley. Thank you, Leo.
Okay, first project, I don't think we have anything on the agenda tonight, so the first project is the Columbus Street sidewalk. I was hoping that it would be done by the time I got here tonight. I came from Des Moines, so I didn't know that. Adam had told me that my inspector was here and was sending pictures to me today to show me it wasn't done, but I guess I figured that out. They still look like they need to do some grading around the fire hydrant quite a bit. And they need to put seed down. We told them they need to winter seed it to get it done. They did do the swale on the other side over by, Rainbow and Maxon that comes together and what's that? It's by the park and to make sure the drainage doesn't pool.
Yes, okay.
We thought they should have done that during construction, but they were gonna do that, and they did get that done. Again, they didn't get it seeded, so Ryan had told me he thought they would do them both together and get them graded. But now Adam told me today that maybe they need help on what to do in grading, but we've told them enough, so I will talk to them tomorrow. I thought that should have been done. Next thing up, we did meet with the staff last week about capital improvement plans and moved a lot of things around on my spreadsheet. And now we're just gonna take that back and put it into seeing how that does for the rates. And our next meeting after that, we probably need to get together with West Liberty Foods and say, okay, here's what the rates look like with the baseline project. And move forward.
You haven't had a meeting with them yet?
No, we had earlier, but not since we made the last changes.
Okay.
Need to do. Okay, so that's the next one. I told you that I'd have numbers for you on the pump and motor where we thought now we have to upsize that. So I did get a letter today from Northway. I haven't reviewed it 100%, but it looked to me like based on theirs, the pipe they need to put in, they have to drop this pipe down, the motor and pump down further, put a new motor, bigger pump. So their cost for the upsize was about $9,700. And then they want $14,400 in crane time, labor time. I told you that you would not be paying for any of the crane time, labor time. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. And you would probably have to pay for the upsize. I haven't reviewed it yet. I'd like to go over it with Tom. Tom is the point of contact from Northway, and I haven't had a chance to do that. I just got it today. That's the latest information I have. Any other questions?
Yeah. Question.
Because I thought when they first looked at it, that they determined that would work. As far as reestablishing that well. And now we're having to upsize it. Okay, so.
So they did think it would work,
Uh-huh.
but for one reason or another, there's enough drop in pressure that they need, yes, pressure and flow together. They thought that it was gonna be about 350 gallons per minute.
Yeah,
When we started doing the tests and everything, it came out about 300. By the time it gets to the RO, it's down to 280 after it settles.
okay.
280 is making the RO shut off. So the only way to get it up is to get more flow and pressure, which they bigger pump that they have to put lower.
Okay,
So the bigger pump and the drop pipe would have had to been done even if they knew that from day one. But they wouldn't have had to put the old one in, take this one out and put the new one in. So that you shouldn't have to pay for it.
I had a question, but it was one of the items on the vendor voucher list to Strand Kim. So I didn't know if this was appropriate or should we wait till?
I'm good.
Yeah, I think.
I just want to know what Project Scarecrow was.
Project what?
it says Project Scarecrow. We will be able to discuss it,
Oh.
presentation.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
perfect,
All right,
thank
good.
you. Correct.
Oh, so then never mind, okay.
Um,
Anything else for city manager?
just a
Sorry.
quick say, occasionally when we have, economic development, inquiries or projects that we would need to identify specifics, that we work with our engineers on, then there's typically a code name or a title in order to protect the confidentiality.
Oh, okay.
So that's the project's name, in order to protect the confidentiality of that.
Got it.
Okay.
All right, nothing else for the city engineer, then we'll go to the city manager. That there are reports in the packet, and you may have had one. And
I have a verbal one.
Okay,
Unfortunately, but fortunately, I've got a lot of things going on. But please, go ahead and review the staff's reports first. And if you have any questions for them,
okay, yeah, so with the city, with streets, it sounds like Adam got some boiler training. This past week. And so the water and sewer and communication report, safety report, and police reports are all in the packet. So are there questions for council members on the reports that have been submitted?
I do have one on the boiler, the DLC. Is that something that is in well enough condition, or is that something we're gonna look at replacing? How is
we
it?
will be looking into it when we have when we have ownership, then we will do a facility study.
Okay,
And that will be a part of the facility study.
Any other questions from council members? All right, thanks for the reports. Now we're back to city manager.
So quickly, so Leo covered a lot of things that we discussed during, the capital improvement planning. Part of that was also the West Side Loop Sewer Extension, a little more discussion into some water, updating the infrastructure with its utility extensions and how that all ties into the rate study. We went through our street projects, and identified, our conversations that we need to start having with bonding. So I'll be reaching out for our financial folks to go over that. And again, he identified that we're closer to a position to sit down and have a formal discussion with West Liberty Foods about their costs that we'd be looking at during that. In addition to that, Councilmember Shiltz did reach out to me with regards to a public complaint with weeds. And the letter has been mailed to the property owner, Councilmember for those, and I will provide you an update as we go through that process. I also just I appreciate that all of community members have the confidence and trust in reaching out to our council members to have conversations with nuisance. But just if you didn't know, we do have a form online that you can direct community members to go to, and they can complete that form. And by doing that, then that starts a process that we can track and identify as a part of that. But I don't want to discourage any of our community members reaching out to our council members. You can have that conversation, but just direct them. That there are forms that also include for streetlights and I believe potholes as well. So with that, then with the clerk, what's been going on with them, they're fully engaged in audit work now with our CPAs. So they've been busy handing more information over to them. In code 10 transition is not going as smoothly as we would like it to go. So I just want to make you aware, for treasurer's reports and reconciliation, we may be behind a month because the transition of the reports did not flow through into code 10 as we have them in 9, but they're working with the clerk to build them to match what we utilize for our reporting. And the reconciliation part of the transactions, because we did a transfer mid period, it did not carry over all of the transactions from the previous in code 9 to 10. But again, the clerk has been working with them. She has a meeting with them tomorrow morning to go through some more of those. If you have any questions, you can ask her directly. But it's an extensive amount of work that she's having to put into that. Through the whole process, though, the good news is that through reconciliation, if you remember, we kind of talked about adjusting entries and having some issues with reconciliation. And the clerk was able to identify that the credit card processing company that we work with, they are not to have charged any fees to the city. And we discovered that there was approximately $6,800 in fees that they had charged. So she contacted and worked with them, and so kudos to Clerk Hoffert. She was able to recover approximately $6,800 in fees that we can put back on our books. So she did a great job with staying the course on that. So and then codification is another big project that the clerk has continued to work through, processing information, reviewing, and as you know, is we're updating and making some amendments to things, and they continue to work towards getting the entire overall codification before council. Don't know the timeline on that yet. There's a few things that are, again, taking a little extra time for review. I've continued to work with FEMA. We currently have 4 existing projects that we're filing on. And if anybody has worked with federal government grants and FEMA, you know, it is very time consuming. But in addition, you know, we're learning a lot and in hopes to recover, you know, most of our costs for the storm damage. Also, we're identifying mitigation projects. This would allow us to have either 100% or low cost for us to upgrade some of our electric stuff, our systems, to mitigate any future damage to those items. So we had 4 FEMA individuals here today to do an on-site inspection. We started off at the meeting this morning, and then they went out into the field with Cody Franklin to do the rest of the inspection. Continuing to work with Iowa Grants, they've extended a reimbursement deadline to December 10th. And we have some more documentation that had come in, so we'll continue to work on processing that. I kept the mayor up to date, and almost daily sometimes on that project. In addition to that, 202 South Columbus Street, if you're familiar with the corner there, we have Bob Smith lives in the small little white house on the corner, Morrison's, and then Kenya Park is across the way. Well, when it rains really heavy, it becomes a big puddle there. And for a number of years, the city has gone kind of back and forth with conversation with the Department of Transportation. In addition to that, we've continually dug out a drainage area that it goes through, causes water to stand in Mr. Smith's property, some problems in Mobile Home Park 2. So, again, just some further conversation between Adam and the water department, and now we brought Leo Foley into it. We want to look at not putting a Band-Aid on the problem anymore. We want to do a permanent fix. So we're going to be in more discussions with that, working with V&K on that, and bring those property owners in on that conversation. Let me see, had a conversation with the library director about fundraising for their project. I have some additional work to do as far as looking at if we need a referendum based on the size of the project. And then a conversation with our financial person as well. We did identify some local option sales tax dollars that we will be looking at making an amendment here in the future to allocate those funds towards the library's project. The ELC, I made a phone call right before Thanksgiving again, and still waiting on that deed to be completed, so we can finish that transaction.
Deed abstract.
Abstract, yes, yeah. Unfortunately, the information was not available, so they have to recreate the whole thing. Then, on top of that, we've been doing some legal work for the fire litigation, and then, straight classes, and last but not least, garbage conversations.
Yes. Yep. Any questions for the city manager in their report?
I missed, what was the December 10th deadline regarding?
Iowa grant
Oh, Iowa grant.
for Spencer Street project.
Did we have everything like done with, I know that December 31st is the deadline for ARPA. So to spend or allocate, so is that all wrapped up? And because I know we haven't talked about it. in a while.
The only thing we have left in those funds are the ambulance dollars.
Yeah, but those are already,
They're already restricted.
yeah,
Mhm.
okay, so we're good there.
And I finalized, and I completed the last report on that, so I think we have one more additional report that we have to do in order to finalize out the project.
Is there anything we can do to speed up the process with the abstract, or pretty much we're kind of we have to be patient?
That's
Okay.
not an easy process if you lose those. Make sure you have your own in lock boxes.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. We've done a lot of the legwork and got them as much information as we could so they could recreate it. So just, again, just as the mayor stated, it takes time. Just with the garbage discussions, on the next meeting, December 17th, we will look to put an action item in front of council regarding maybe an addition to the ordinance, because we've had, I know council members have been contacted by one or maybe more than one property owner about the ordinance, and the mayor has set in with the city staff in those conversations along with Kenbrook with you to go over the information very detailed, and although we may not agree as far as the property owner agreeing, at the end of the day, I mean, the ordinance and the cost that we've imposed is the true cost for us to provide this service. And we're not in a position where we're making a profit. It is what it costs for us to remove the solid waste from the city. And we've done the work for the last several years to identify if there was any other way we could avoid doing any type of increases or changing. But through the process, we also identified that there was some billing changes. And so as we continue to move forward on this and hear what is being presented, we will bring to council and try our best within what we can do to work with these property owners. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's a cost to removing that solid waste. And that is, I think that covers everything.
All right. Again, any other questions for the city manager? Next on the agenda is committee reports, and my recollection is no committees have met. So we will turn to our excuse me, go
Committee
ahead.
reports.
Yeah.
I know that we were gonna try and have more of a routine, I think it was finance committee, so that we could I guess be updated on the most recent changes or, you know, things on finance. And we haven't met in a while, and I would like to request that we have a finance committee. Also, Mira, it's kind of related, because Lee, you mentioned the garbage stuff. I don't remember, first of all, if I'm on the utility committee, but is that something that the utility committee would usually talk about before an ordinance is changed for the utility? So what is the purpose of the utility committee?
So For us in the past, historically, what the utility committee has had meetings on is infrastructure upgrades.
Okay,
And a part of those infrastructure upgrades, the costs, would there need to be, would we need to do a bonding, based on those, in which direction to kind of go with that?
I do think that, during those meetings too, I believe they've had some discussion in regards to rates or rate studies, something that they've talked about in order to like bring information before the council.
It's typically always tied to the project. So when we, in the past, when those committees, such as the last time we had more of the utilities, when we upgraded the electric, the switchgear. That was utility committees met to go over that project significantly. To identify, and prioritize that project. In addition to that, if we've had a major street project, there are times if the utilities are gonna be involved, if there's more conversation that needs to be had. But it's just, for my experience, it's just, again, I mean, it's identifying whether council wants to, it's council who is communicating if they want to have a committee meeting. And what do they want to have, those committees, what do they want to set the agenda? So the clerk or the city administrator, I mean, it's not our positions to set those meetings. That would be between the mayor and those committees. If you identify, what agendas you want to cover, or what you look to have, then we can go through that and see if that's within, how that. A bigger part of what's been going on with us is that we've been more or less meeting as a council as a whole versus individual committees.
It's also part of our ordinance updates because we have committees that aren't established in the ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there other questions about committee reports? Hearing none, I'll recognize the lead director, but I want to ask the question first. Mr. Ken Brooks, do you have any exciting news for us tonight?
Mr. Mayor, I have all kinds of exciting news.
Good.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the opportunity to present tonight. My number one favorite thing about providing leadership to a community and economic development organization is the opportunity to work with people that are truly excited about making this community a better place in which to live, work, learn, grow, and play. My second favorite part about providing leadership to a community and economic development agency is the fact that I get to come up with the code names for sensitive projects. One of those code names, one of the sensitive projects we were working on is called Project Scarecrow. We named it Project Scarecrow because it deals with an input commodity for the business that we are going to discuss publicly for the first time tonight. But the reason I'm really excited to bring this news is because in working with the team at Life Raft, and we're going to make some introductions here in a minute, we get to merge my number one and my number two favorite bands together. So here in a minute to give the actual presentation with far more interesting things than I have to offer will be the CEO of Life Raft, William Cowley. And let me tell you, he is not only interested in bringing this industry to our community that by my numbers will have tens of millions of dollars of economic impact just in the next few years. But he is also keen in making this community a better place in which to live, work, learn, grow, and play. So with your permission, I turn over.
Absolutely, yes.
Hello everyone. Hello. First time I've heard that code name today. So if I recall,
Hopefully you're not the scarecrow.
yeah, if I recall though, the Scarecrow and the Wizard of Oz was seeking the brain. So I hope by the end of my presentation you conclude that we've got one, and maybe also a heart too, like the Tin Man. So there we go. Obviously it's a bit bright in here. as you might have told from my shirt, the sort of theme of the color, the theme of the material we produce is quite dark, so you might not see it all too well. Or the other. Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Also, if I'm standing in the
Perfect.
wrong place, let me know where I should go. I'll sort of try and turn my attention on. So, hi everyone, I'm Will Cowell. I'm CEO of a company called Life Raft, and today I'm here to tell you all about what we do and our proposed plan to work with you here in West Liberty and the surrounding community. So, it's a quick little open process stuff. If you don't mind, I'll just say next slide.
Yep.
Next slide, please. Oh, it's got the groovy thing on it. Okay, so Liferaft is a biochar company. What is biochar? Broadly speaking, anything that has grown, any organic matter, so that can be a tree, that can be corn, it can be anything else, and it can be sub-processed versions of those, even actually sewage, can be turned into a material called biochar. What you do, you take that material, a lot of it, you run it through effectively a rotary kiln. So it's a lot more sophisticated than that, especially in terms of recycling the natural gases that are produced to produce heat and so forth. But broadly, you take that material, you heat it to about 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit, and you fundamentally change its properties. So you effectively evaporate everything off, leaving almost pure carbon. And if you look at that pure carbon under a microscope, it has this honeycomb look, you can see at the top there. If you look at it in your hand, it looks like a kind of pile of small charcoal, depending on it's a really amazing material. Firstly, it's a very, very high concentration of carbon. And so it represents per ton of biochar, somewhere between, depending on the material you use, 2.2 and 3.2 tons of atmospheric CO2 condensed into that material, which will then keep locked up for somewhere between 200 and 1,000 years. What that means is that you can sell carbon credits associated with that material to big corporations like Boeing and Microsoft or other who want to address carbon emissions in their supply chain. So that's one of the benefits of the material. The other, it's a very potent catalyst for soil health. So it would be wrong to call it a fertilizer. It works in concert with fertilizers. When you apply it to the soil, mixed in with soil, manure, or other fertilizers, what it does is those little tiny honeycombs there provide a home for microbial life that it would normally have to build itself. That microbial life then enriches itself from various different natural elements, which it sucks into the soil, enriching that soil. It has this sort of cascade of life where that starts to impact insect life, which in turn brings birds and so forth. And so it's a way of restoring soil health without having to do anything unnatural at all. Sort of organic way of improving soil. And then if you want to increase your yields, you get about 25% yield bump on average from the application of biochar. If you add conventional fertilizers to that, that only increases that. So it is recognized by the USDA. If you go into the local USDA branch here, they have a NRCS grant for biochar, and it's sort of gathering sort of federal level interest and awareness. I believe that Congresswoman Miller Meeks actually runs a panel on biochar. So it's something that's gathering a lot of momentum. We make this, and we want to do it in West Liberty. Next slide, please. So how do you make it? It's a little bit cut off there, but down on the bottom there, that is an actual picture of our machine that will be going into the first facility. And we are proposing to feed that machine with corn stover, corn husks, cobs, and other things which are in a surprising amount of abundance in the area. So what we're looking to do is take a portion of a waste product. We're not talking about stripping every single scrap of corn off of every field around. Whatever our farmer partners are willing to share with us, and we do pay them for it. Typically it's a couple of tons an acre or something along those lines. Take that, process that into a smaller amount, put it into our machine and turn it into biochar. Interestingly, I was listening to your point about solid waste and the cost and so forth. You can also feed things like storm damaged wood or tree trimmings and so forth. So often we see in other facilities, and we may see here, you can divert things from landfill that might cause a cost, and we can actually turn those into something that has an economic benefit. So take that material, feed it into this big machine, heat it to about 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit. We process about 5 tons of material an hour, and we output about 1.5 tons of biochar an hour. What we then also do in that process is create a lot of synthetic gas. So it's just like natural gas that you would get in a gas power plant, but produced through that process. We then recycle that to create our own heat. So actually only when you start the machine up from cold, do you need to consume any actual natural gas from a mains pipe. The process effectively self-powers with the heat that it generates, keep going. Now it does draw quite a bit of electricity, so I think we've already been in touch with the city engineer and asked about the load there. It's about 230 kilowatt hours of draw. So in the context of some of the other facilities in the area, not an enormous amount, but that's the only kind of key input. And so that's what we do. And we're proposing to put a facility, next slide, please, in at the West Liberty Development Zone, the industrial development zone, so right there on Freedom Street. Again, a little bit cut off here, but it should look fairly simple and fairly elegant and clean on the outside. So we're talking a high-grade metalled barn, about 30 feet high, 130-ish feet long, 80 feet wide, with a silo to put the material that will then be siloed into the facility inside. And then a few of the kind of cooling elements of the process situated around one of the outside. What you see down the bottom there is a layout of we've purchased the 3.5 acre lots of 3 separate lots in that zone. That actually, as you'll see, has 2 facilities and a storage area. We're with hopefully successful first deployment and support of the community and so forth. We're hoping very swiftly to put a second machine in at that location and potentially a third as well. We think that 3 in any 120-mile radius would pretty much exhaust the natural amount of material that you can take sustainably. But with each machine, I'll come on to the economic benefits in a bit, you multiply those economic benefits. And for us, there's clearly a significant benefit in having co-location of facilities that means you can have a lot of mutual support between them. So we will submit these plans formally, and they are subject to just last bits of engineering change. Basically, we're trying to work out exactly where to have the silo to make it most accessible for the trucks that will be delivering to it. But broadly, it's going to look like that. So the first part of that will be the first warehouse with a silo. We'll have the storm drainage pond, everything to make sure that we're up to code. We'll have the sealed parking, everything to make sure that we're in alignment with town ordinances as well. And we are working with 4 either hyper-local or regionally local contractors on this. So All American Concrete for all of our concreting work. We've got Dave Schmidt for the grading and backfill. We've got McClure Engineers for the engineering plans, and we've got Grinder Buildings being built. So it's all local firms that we're working with, and that's a part of the initial injection of capital into. Slide, please. Thank you. Yes, so moving on to the economic impact. To set one of these facilities up is about a $4 million project once you've encompassed the construction of the facility, purchase of the machine, and then the initial purchase of all of that feedstock. So we're typically paying in advance to the farmers for the tonnage that we are gathering in, and we would also be doing that with things like any kind of wood chip waste, all that kind of stuff, so that we have that up front. Then we're going to be creating around about 20 jobs directly. So we would be running 3 shifts a day. And that will be as much as we can, 24/7. These machines do not like to cycle up and cycle down too much, a bit like a power plant or anything like that. When you're applying a lot of heat, it's the variance between the heats that does the damage. So the more you cycle them down, the worse it is. They also perform the worst when they are cold, because that's when they're having to consume the natural gas. That's the only time you'd see anything like a puff of smoke. Otherwise, it's basically emitting a clean flue. So we want to run regularly. That will be hiring people locally. I've been working with Ken, and I have to give a massive shout out to Wheeling for being so fantastic in this process, helping with everything from understanding the local labour market to navigating the land and so forth. So we're working together. We've actually already made our first offer for a supervisor's or sort of regional operations manager role to a West Liberty resident, which we're very excited about. It will be our first contract in Iowa, so I'm just making sure from our lawyers who are being very thorough that the offer letter is compliant and so forth. Fingers crossed that will be confirmed in the next couple of days, so that'll be our first offer. And then very soon, January, February, we'll be going out to hire those 20-odd roles. So across those 3 shifts, probably 2 rotations. We'll be also looking for local contractors very soon for electrics and plumbing. So we'll need some electrical and plumbing work in the final stage of the construction. We'll also want ongoing partnerships in terms of any kind of maintenance that we might want to do. Again, we'll want to, if we can, pick West Liberty local firms for that. There'll also be about 15 indirect jobs in the region. So I mentioned the amount of material we process, 5 tons an hour, it's about 35,000 tons a year per machine that we're processing. That's 3 to 4 semi-truckloads a day turning up. So we have truck driving roles being created. We have people working in a facility that's going to be built on agricultural land adjacent to a fertilizer location to actually process the material into the right size. We looked at doing that on site originally, but grinding is loud and can create a lot of dust. We didn't want to do that as close to the town as the site is, so decided to work with a local partner and have that offsite. And he's indicated it'd be about 15 roles that he'll be taking on. And again, with each machine that we increase those numbers, I talked about the 4 local contractors we've worked with already. And so, yeah, this is just for that first site. From our perspective, I met with, and this has been fully funded, much of the capital has already been spent and the rest of it is ready to go. I met with our investors a couple of weeks ago, and they laid out 2 priorities in order to be able to sign the checks for the next 2 machines. We've already met one of those, and the second we hope to meet by January time. And so those would be probably a 5-6 month lag to the first site. So looking at maybe in the fall of next year, having those sites be operational. All being well, us receiving the support and approval of the town, this first site should be operational by March. And we'll be running training for that. The jobs that we are hiring, they will require training and a little bit more kind of skilled and interesting, we hope, work. So we'll probably run about a month of training before. And then I wanted to pause briefly on this economic impact, something that I haven't put here. It's a little bit hard to render down into a couple of words, but this is a very interesting and growing industry. It's really synergistic with farming and the local community. This is something that can bring soil health, utilize waste products, but it's also something that's got global interest. It's only really just being understood, both in terms of the impact on the soil and the ecosystem, but also the economic benefits that it can bring. I mentioned before, it's starting to get that federal level interest. One of the other things we look to do very soon, working with Ken, is reach out to various universities, look at bringing PhD students to come work on the site, learn about the process, give them some biochar to go and study and kind of further that knowledge. And the last thing I haven't mentioned is this will be the largest biochar facility in the United States. By quite a considerable margin, like 3 of those machines will be producing nearly 70,000 tons of biochar. We believe that the largest facility at the moment does about 10,000 tons. So this will be the largest in the United States, potentially the entirety of North America, and located right here in West Liberty. Next slide. Oh yes, I've talked about this a little bit already. I just wanted to highlight some of those natural benefits. So you get healthier soil, and the cascade of life that comes with that. There's higher yields, especially if you add fertilizer to them. Also helps with filtration and prevention of water runoff, very porous absorbent surface. So things like heavy metals and other pollutants can get absorbed by it. Something for down the road, but actually if you have large bodies of water that you're looking at treating, the use of that biochar can be quite meaningful in that. And of course, there's that carbon sequestration element as well. So not only would the biochar represent sequestered carbon, but it also increases the ability of the soil to do so, which in turn enriches the health of the soil. So moving on finally, I think, to Q&A. Yes. So I picked a couple up front that I thought I'd get ahead of, that if I were living in the community, I might ask. And then I would love to open it up to the floor to any, so number one, because I've heard that this might be a concern, will this compete with local fertilizer company? I know there are a couple in the nearby region. The answer should be no. It's a very different product. Does not work like a chemical fertilizer. We don't expect any change of behavior around the use of chemical fertilizers. We do hope to see the 2 used in concert, because they will actually have a great mutual benefit. But again, compared to even the size of just this county in Iowa, let alone the entirety of Iowa, the amount that we're producing is measured in the low tens of thousands of tons. It's not going to cover an enormous number of acres. So those 2 things hopefully should answer that question, that it's not a competition for the company. Does taking the corn off the soil damage that soil? This is a really interesting question. And I started my journey in understanding this by talking to the USDA. Now, they have a stance that you should leave at least 33% of the plant on the ground. With corn, that's almost covered by the root ball and a little bit of stuff. If you were to go and see some of the fields where we've baled up corn, the vast majority, unless the farmer has asked us to do differently, we've taken about half of what's on the ground. So to the naked eye, you wouldn't necessarily even see the difference. And the majority of what we take is the most fibrous and dense piece. So those stalks or those husks and cobs that actually can be quite a nuisance to putting anything else down on the soil. So what we've heard from farmers is, if you're doing corn on corn, this is perfect because it reduces that instance of disease the following year. If you're looking at putting down cover crops, this is fantastic because you now don't need to go and till, you can actually go and do it much more simply. And even if you're doing neither of those things, as long as you don't take more than a couple of tons per acre, then you shouldn't have any meaningful long-term impact, especially if you then go and put biochar or fertilizer, or preferably both, back on that same land. We've been paying about $30 a ton for the corn stover, and to replace that in manure is $10 a ton. So even if you just put the same weight right back on, you'd end up with a $20 net difference. So our feeling on that, and the USDA has a stance on this as well, is that it isn't damaging to the soil, but we are always open to feedback and so forth. And clearly, if any of our farmer partners felt like it was negative, and some felt reticent in advance, we didn't work with those that weren't up for it. So we're always open to that feedback. When will we be operational? Depends a little bit on the timelining and the permitting for the physical facility. We're hoping to, ultimately it's a relatively simple building. It's effectively a metal pole barn. So we're hoping to have that constructed by March. Depends a little bit on that. We also need to submit for the Iowa DNR permit for operating the machine, because there is an element of emission. But given how clean that emission is, we don't think that'd be a problem. We've been told by McLaw it's a 30-day process. So hopefully by March. And then I've covered this a little bit already, but yes, USDA are aware of biochar. They've got a policy on it. They even actually offer funding. You have to apply for it. I don't know how many get it, but they do offer a funding of $600 a ton, I think, or maybe $600 an acre to apply biochar to fields for their farm. So with that, I'll turn over to, I've been bombarding you with information, so I'll take a breath and turn over to the council and any members of the gathered to answer questions.
Yeah. All right, let me start with council members and questions.
Initially, you mentioned 2 uses.
Mhm.
With the second being the post catalyst.
Mhm.
What was the first one again? I missed that.
It's captured carbon, so it's carbon
Just
credit.
caption.
So
And then what is the purpose behind that?
So globally, there are a range of companies, and so there's lots of them in the United States. You know, prominent examples would be Google's, Microsoft, Boeing's, number of others, JP Morgan, who are looking to take the emissions, the carbon emissions of their organizations down to a net zero by typically it's 2050. Now, many of them recognize that they'll never actually get there by eliminating their own emissions, because certain elements are just too hard to impact. You can't stop using all energy in the building, and they don't have control over what creates that energy, for example. Or if you're a steel maker or a concrete maker, it's not possible to switch to a renewable alternative for creating the level of heat that you need. So what those companies who are seeking that net zero position by 2050 do is they purchase credits against the emissions they can't remove. And so where we've captured a ton of carbon, prevented it being released to the atmosphere, they can then purchase a credit against that, which allows them to release a ton and still not have gone above their net zero. So they're kind of netting off the emissions that they make with the credits. So in Europe, you may have told I'm originally British, there's actually a formalized system, a trading system, where companies are allocated a certain amount of emissions they're allowed each year, and they kind of trade between. So if you're a concrete maker and you need a lot, you'll trade with maybe a big pharma company that's able to reduce their emissions a lot and pay a price for the credit. So the beauty of CO2 is it's a global phenomenon, so we can capture right here in the United States and sell it anywhere. Now, it looks like all of our clients will be US based, but in theory, it could be sold around the world. And if you're wondering how do we actually capture carbon, well, it's the plants that do that. When plants grow, almost 90% of their dry weight is CO2 that they've absorbed from the atmosphere through photosynthesis and then locked up. But when you cut them down and they rot, they re-release that either as methane or CO2, typically within 5 or 7 months. By putting it through this process, you stabilize it. Not dissimilar to the massive forces that made coal a long time ago. You stabilize that, and basically, unless you burn that biochar, it will take a lot longer to release that CO2. Typically, when people buy a credit, they're looking for something that's durable, which is defined as over 200 years. This is between 200 and 1,000 years that this credit's been. So that allows the economics of a site to work, because the biochar itself is very fluctuating price, it's a commodity, just like we've seen with corn this year, the price can go up and go down. Very hard to underpin the economics of a facility like this on that physical material alone. Whereas your carbon contracts, you typically see a 3 or 5 year agreement for an offtake amount, and that helps us to underpin the economics of the site so that we know, right, we can get to 80% of our operating costs covered by this carbon contract, which gives us a lot more dependability to keep the facility running and to put the biochar. And of course, if like me, you're believing in climate change, then you are doing something about climate change.
Are you able to utilize animal waste for this?
In theory, so when it comes to the sequestration of carbon, as I said before, anything that's organic can be used. And so animals build their bodies out of the plants that they consume. And so ultimately you could. But there's also not all bio-waste is created equal. So we've looked at a number of different sources. So there's a paper recycling plant relatively close that has this sort of very wet, mulchy output. The problem is that's been processed a lot. So the carbon embodied in it is only about 20% as opposed to 70% in corn. So the juice that ends up not being worth the squeeze. We've looked at things like eggshells, feathers, those kind of things that might be available from West Liberty food. The problem is the quality of the output. For eggshells, it's very low carbon content. And for feathers, you need to pelletize them significantly. And because of the lightness and so forth, they just don't work out as a perfect product. They create a lot of ash. So we haven't found one yet that works, but in theory, you can use anything. Now, if you don't care about the carbon credits, you can produce any kind of, you can produce biochar from kind of anything. We know people who do this from used tires and so forth, right? But yeah, for us, stuff that works best are things like corn, brewers, spent grain, husks and things like that. They're output from seed corn companies. Wood waste is fantastic. But if it's things like sawdust, sort of fine materials, we just need to pelletize it to make sure that it's dense enough.
Other questions for council members?
So you talked about the electricity usage, and we of course have our own.
Mhm.
Is that one of the reasons why we chose West Liberty, or what was the reason why West Liberty?
I think that's certainly a massive help because it stops us having to deal with a sort of wider utility community. That said, I want to be keeping in close communication to make sure that our usage of electricity isn't causing any kind of issues. The reason why West Liberty, I mean, if I were to sum it up in a word, if you can, but it's a long and winding road that we got here. Effectively, I got to know somebody in a neighboring town. We looked at doing a partnership originally. Unfortunately, that didn't work out for a couple of reasons. Like it just didn't seem like the partnership worked both ways. But in that process, got to know the area and learned of really, they got a really good website, they got a really good directory of the land that's available. And then just sort of the stars seemed to align. There was a site that had space for us that actively seemed like it wanted us to be there. A town where we could then come in and do good for the community, not just be another thing tagged onto another industrial state, somewhere nondescript where nobody's going to notice or care about us. And so that for us is really important. Our name is Life Raft, and it's supposed to be multifarious, right? We're supposed to be a life raft for the farmers that we work with, the communities that we're in, the planet that we all live on. And that's what we're hoping to be here. So
And
yeah.
that was kind of my other follow-up question, because I know West Liberty Foods is a major industry, but they do a lot for the community as well. So how does Life Raft or Biochar, I don't know what the company,
The company's called Life Raft, yeah.
Okay,
Biochar's the product, yeah.
So like in maybe your other facilities, you have other facilities in the US.
This will be our first US facility.
Oh, okay, great. Then I guess you wouldn't know, but
But we do hope to
You're
be very
committed
actively
to-
a part of the
Yeah.
community. I'll basically be seeking council guidance, Ken's guidance on the best way to do that. So a couple of things we've already explored is, for example, partnerships with universities and various other kind of research groups, and that's certainly do a lot of profile raising and so forth. I think the skill nature and the kind of emerging nature of the technology in the industry we're in will hopefully attract a lot of maybe a sort of different profile that might ordinarily be considering coming to move to West Liberty. And then I hope that we get involved in some more standard things, like Christmas events or stuff like that might help them. I was listening in and thinking, I didn't know that there was a library fundraising drive going on. I'm sure it's for something very worthy. That's the kind of thing that we probably want to set aside a donation pool each year for, you know, local causes, that kind of stuff. And then the last thing we would love to do, and this has been on my mind for a while, is to create a path for people that maybe don't have that path at the moment to get a really worthwhile career where they can build skills and longevity. So people who might not conventionally be in the workforce or might have issues getting to workforce, for example, if they had like a non-violent conviction or something like that, where the opportunities are fewer, like give people a chance, basically, to another life. That's something we'd really like to consider. But we wouldn't want to, I guess our view is we don't want to charge in and tell you what we think you want. We want you to tell us what you want and then work with you on doing that.
So your efforts for your labor shed is, you really want to make it local. Like, we're not bringing in, you know, the visa quality from overseas to come and work, or, okay.
No, so all four of the companies that we're contracting with
Okay.
are either from here or, you know, within 50 miles of here.
Okay.
So unfortunately, West Liberty didn't have quite the full service engineering firm only here, or at least we didn't find. But obviously all American are hyper and so forth. So that's the idea, is to kind of disperse those dollars. Now, the machinery is not made here in West Liberty. It's very complex machinery, but other than that, everything else will be coming from.
Are there other states that you all are looking at too, or is it just, I mean, because we are, this town, we're not big, but we have a history of being the first.
Yeah.
So it really fits.
Yeah.
that, you know, we would be the first, and then, but I'm just trying to see big picture of like, if it expanded, you know.
So I think we hope to expand as close to the region as we can initially, because there's all those kind of synergies of big sites locally. So say kind of 20-mile radius is quite important for us, because it reduces the cost, the amount of gas used, etc., to bring the materials in. But also that has a natural constraint, right? You can only there's only so much material in that kind of area. So what we hope is to kind of drop this locally. Ken, I think, has some ideas of local communities that might want to connect. In theory, we can do this in any state. Clearly, the Midwest makes a lot of sense in terms of abundance of corn. We have had outreaches from there's a program in North Dakota called the Grand Farm. They're very interested in biochar and so forth. But I'd say it's going to be a case-by-case basis. We're looking at probably doing 50 to 60 machines, which is sort of 15 to 20 of these sites over the next 3 to 5 years. So there'll definitely be a lot of expansion in the region. And we'll basically see how each one goes. I wouldn't want to commit to other states at this point. Like, we're kind of all in on Iowa right now, and then we'll see how it goes.
And then also, would it be about 15 positions per machine or total for that site? Like once we have
per machine. So
then you'll add another group of folks.
exactly.
If we add machines.
Now, for example, if you have a mechanic that is there to do the preventative maintenance on the machine, they probably serve
Do all of them,
realistically.
yeah.
But what we're talking about is, you know, we're putting out a large amount of material each hour. We're going to have to physically move that material. There's going to be people with forklifts, those kind of things. It'll probably come out in these white 1-ton tote bags, that kind of stuff. So each machine is going to need to do it. You can't hustle anything between the two. So typically 2 or 3 people attending each machine at any time. And then clearly you've got those kind of supervisor roles and so forth that might expand out.
Okay.
So, other questions from council? One of the buildings close to the weed lead office has a saying on it, "You belong here."
Yeah.
You belong here. So I think we should appreciate the.
Thank you. I would like to thank you so much for opening your arms to us, and we're really excited to kind of get stuff
Yeah,
in.
good.
With your permission, I will go ahead and provide your information to the council. We just didn't do that.
Oh, next slide, sorry.
We didn't do it ahead of time,
Yeah.
just because we wanted to, maintain the confidentiality until we had the presentation.
And this has been cut off a little bit there, but I provide an email in this for anybody, whether on the council or community who wants to get in touch with questions. Also, just liferaft.cc is our website. You'll see some video footage that we've taken and so forth of the farms we've got. So please do reach out, any questions. I'm going back to the UK for Christmas time, but otherwise I'll be here basically every week. So
Are you related
I
to
will-
Simon? Or different last.
Very, very common question, unfortunately, no. Probably wouldn't need to be building a business like this if that's not the relationship, but there we go.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly, then there are some pluses as well. Fantastic, well, thank you all so much.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
And I'll stick around as well till the end of
Okay,
tonight,
great.
if anyone.
Yeah.
So council, I will forward you on then the presentation, so you
Okay.
have that information.
Good.
I just didn't know, is there any additional direction with that presentation? That just to have them maintain it and don't share that information? Is there anything that we need to specifically say with council with, by providing them information?
So, no, look, I mean, most of what I've covered in that, presentation there is pretty public knowledge, but
Okay.
you glean most of it from our website. I ideally not have the site design or the machine schematic pages shared widely on the internet, and so I wanted to show you what it looked like, you kind of get a conception.
Yeah.
But I'd rather, like, it's not the end of the world, but I'd really rather it didn't go out too publicly. The other thing is, our intention with regards to press, we'd obviously want to work in concert with Ken and the council and so forth, but we would expect when we announce, which we have not done yet, because we want to make sure it's running, but when we announce the largest facility in the United States on a topic that's kind of a hot topic, that should bring a decent amount of attention locally. We'd like to coordinate on that, but we would like not to prematurely announce it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. Yep, and thank you. That was just, that way we can make sure that, council understands and expectations and instructions and whatever. So I appreciate you.
All right. Well, everything after that is going to be somewhat anticlimactic. Next up is item number 6A, vendor claim voucher list number 1 in the amount of $345,694.47. Is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Do we need to defer on item 6B? Yes, because council member or Mayor Pro Tem McFerren has a conflict of interest, and we don't have a quorum then to, or the votes that we need to accomplish that. So next up is item number 7, public comments and or correspondence. And this is a time when the public can present comments to the city council other than those listed on the agenda. So let me call and see if there are any public comments. Are there any public comments? Ken Brooks.
Ken Brooks, Wheelie, 119 East 3rd Street. As a board member of the West Liberty Chamber of Commerce, we wanted to thank the city of West Liberty very much for all of your efforts in this past weekend's holiday open house. I think that went swimmingly. I also wanted to recognize Chamber Director Jacob Lang for all of his hard work.
Yes.
In that. And finally, I wanted to thank all the local businesses who made that a possible. So thank you for everybody coming together and making it a very successful event.
And I forgot to mention Shop with the Cop is tomorrow, which is a great community event. And I think council members have been invited if they want to help with that as well.
Yeah, they want to come up and the meeting center and stuff, and we just appreciate all the businesses that donated. So it's great years, Kenny, I'm sharing the numbers that we got and stuff. It's been a huge help for us in terms of getting some of that, because there were some hiccups with Walmart and some issues and stuff, but Ken, and Kristen did a huge, people who worked with that and make sure we got that funding and stuff. So it's gonna be a great year for a lot of kids.
We've raised more than 17,000.
Wonderful.
That's amazing.
Good. Yeah. Good. So that then, if there are no other public comments, we'll move to comments and correspondence from council members. Council member Shiltz.
We just had the correspondence from some neighbors around 8th Street and city manager Geertz covered earlier.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem McFerren.
I have been contacted by several businesses or apartment owners in town in regards to the dumpster alignment with the fees and the multi-unit apartments. Since there was a little bit of confusion and maybe a little bit of necessary communication that needed to happen that perhaps didn't. I think that we have things ironed out. I spoke with Mr. Geary this afternoon. And he seems to be, you know, more clear on what is happening. It is a concern for me as, to be honest, I didn't have as good an understanding as I thought I did, but I do now, and I'm hoping that in the next month here, we'll be able to reach out to these apartment owners and be able to work with them on finding a compromise resolution in order to work with them.
Councilmember Dominguez.
Yeah, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem. I think I admitted to, I talked to Mr. Geary earlier today and admitted that I don't believe I fully understand what the ordinance changes were, what the rate changes were. So my question, and I know we're gonna talk about it, you know, later this month, but my question would be just more needing more clarification of why the rates were specifically just for the apartments or the, you know, the multi-unit homes instead of everybody. So,
So the clarification is there's been no rate change.
right.
You did not pass an ordinance with a rate change.
That's what I thought, but
Well, we did.
so we can talk about it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not on the agenda, but yeah, I just need to understand better, I think, what that did.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Geertz can explain it.
If, I mean, if you want her to. explain it.
But we, you know, we could do it at the next meeting as well to give us more time.
Yeah, I want us to note the comments and correspondence, but not have a debate on it due to the fact that I don't want to violate open meetings laws.
And that was the only correspondence.
So then we move to city manager for correspondence, so comments.
Like, any of those correspondence was those meetings and I addressed that.
And the city clerk.
I just have one that was forwarded on to me from Jacob Lane about the leak that is on Elm Street. The water department is aware of it and we are working through that, so I did let them know. So, and that was here, so it got
Yeah.
fixed, so now we don't have to worry about that.
All right. With that, then we'll move on to item 8A, ordinance 2024-1119-10, an ordinance amending the code of ordinance of the city of West Liberty by adding a new section dumping privately into private dumping in privately owned dumpsters. This is the second reading. We cannot waive the third reading due to the fact that we just have 3 of the 5 council members here. So is there a motion to accept the second reading of the ordinance?
The motion to accept the second reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion?
This is completely different than what we just talked about.
Yes,
Okay.
this is, well,
This is just an ordinance, like for us to be able to pursue nuisance, right?
where I would
Somebody
say that,
else.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
go ahead.
Yeah, I would say the only connection to it is that I think part of the problem has been people dumping into city dumpsters and causing more waste. And so this gives us a mechanism to take care of that problem.
And Councilmember Dominguez, this goes off of the one that you guys recently passed for the illegal dumping. That is the statewide one. This is for us to have the ability to enforce it within the community of West Liberty. Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions or comments? Hearing none, the clerk, we have the motion, yeah, so the clerk will call the roll.
McFerren,
Yes.
Dominguez,
Yes.
Shiltz,
Yes.
motion passes 3-0.
Okay, next up is ordinance 2024-1119 -10, an ordinance amending the code of ordinances of the city of West Liberty by amending provisions pertaining to council meetings. This will be the second reading. And this is what gives us the opportunity to change the time that we have meetings, but show up at 7:30 on the 17th because we still have another reading of it. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Shiltz,
Yes.
McFerrin,
Yes.
Dominguez,
Yes.
motion passes 3-0.
Then we move on to 9A, resolution 2024-1203-205, a resolution to accept and approve the annual financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to accept and approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion?
Yeah, I think I had sent correspondence about this, and I read in the ordinance that it did say that the state recommends that the council approve as well as accept. My comment was, and I remember when I went to the MLA Institute, that be very careful of when you're doing something like the financial report to not say approve, just accept it into the public record or accept it to be filed or approve it to be filed. But from reading the, how it's written, it looks like that might have changed. Because it said that the state of Iowa, the state of Iowa recommends it, so I'm okay with that if that's what the state of Iowa says.
Yep, and I did go, and reach out to the Iowa League of Cities, and this is a common practice across the board. So when we're approving it, it's the actual report that's being filed. That doesn't mean that there's not gonna be amendments after the audit is complete. These are unaudited numbers, so this is the initial report that we file. If for some reason it would come back and the auditor would say that we needed to change something, what we would do is we would make an amendment, and then that would come back before you as well.
Okay.
Also during those reports, when you guys are getting those treasurer reports and stuff like that, those are the numbers. So June 30th of 2024, those are the numbers that we're going to stop of for that. So you guys do have the ability to look at those, and you guys can always come in and ask me as well. I'd recommend waiting a couple months here while I work through all the transition stuff, but you guys can definitely come in and ask me any questions that you have, any reports that you want to see. So that you do have that clarification as to what numbers I am filing. The other thing is that the city clerk takes responsibility for that. I am certifying it and filing it.
Are there further questions or concerns from council members? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Dominguez,
Yes.
Shiltz,
Yes.
McFerrin,
Yes.
motion passes 3-0.
Next up is consider a motion naming the official newspapers of the city of West Liberty as the West Liberty Index primary and the Muscatine Journal as secondary. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
And it has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and those are our official newspapers. Item 10. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are in adjournment. Thank you all very much.